Alright, we're here to play some Simic Merfolk in Pioneer. Currently floating around the top of the numbers, high percentages in Mythic. Playing against Schindler. I have definitely played against Schindler before. They were on mono black mid-range last time we played. We're on the play here. Let's see what we get. Alright, knowing that this is a card advantage, I wouldn't keep this on the draw because I'd be worried about Thoughtseize. But looking, they're on Yorion, so likely a control deck this time. Against control, Silvergill and Cavernous Souls is going to make up my mind. So we're going to keep this two-lander. Alright, they kept Glasspool Mimic for our first land. And then we'll domain control. Play our Silvergill Adept. Get something on the board that doesn't cost us anything. Reveal Kamena. Give them something tempting to counter or kill later on. Awesome. Drew a land off that Silvergill. Vendo's not necessarily bad. Gives us a plausible reason to not cast Kamena this turn, and then we'll hold up for Collected Company next turn. In we get. We're pretty much going to cast nothing here, hoping to make him waste that 2 life from the shock land and the mana. Let's see what they're going to do. Nothing. So, good tempo turn there. They are looking for a juicier target than a Silvergill Adept. So, we're going to send out a Floodpits Drowner. Not a 2-for-1 like a Silvergill Adept is, but gets 2 bodies on the table. Alright, we're now threatening Collected Company. He still doesn't want to seem to do anything. So we've got the control player and a little bit of analysis paralysis, waiting for the best possible targets for what they want to cast. Alright, I'm not going to cast a Coco into counter magic here. Options are Hexcatcher, Tidebinder. I think from a mana efficiency perspective, we're going to play the Tidebinder here. Might regret it later, but we'll see how it goes. See if they kill something while we don't have mana up. Alright, they let it go to our turn. Alright, in comes the crew. They gotta kill something here. They don't really have a choice. Awesome. Abrupt Decay, which is not bad for us. Alright, they're down to 8. So if they do nothing here, we could just swing in with the 4 power we have on the board, but they're getting pretty low. All it's going to take is 1 tempo-y play for us to get in. So we're just going to pass and swing. In we come again. They're going to go to 4. Alright, let's cast. We don't want to use the Cavern. We want to save that for the Hexcatcher. So they know something's up, but they don't have confirmation of what. And let's cast a Silvergill. Counterable. Alright, got the control player to scoop without casting anything but a single removal spell. Knowing it's domain control, they're probably still going to bring in some counter magic, so I think we're going to want our Mystical Disputes here. We didn't see any temporary lockdowns or other enchantment-based removal, but I'm going to assume they're in there. So our Secret Keepers don't do us any good here, and our Mistbinders aren't 2-for-1s, so we're going to take them out, bring in the Mystical Disputes, and our Back to Natures. Now, do we want to cut anything else out for a Spell Pierce? Probably. What would we drop here? We like our Mind Springs to redraw us cards. Probably a Floodpits Drowner would be the next cards to start to come out. So let's drop one of them for a Spell Pierce. Our hope here is on the draw. We get to cast a Spell Pierce, hit something, and then they have to play around it for the rest of the match. All right, we got a Sanctum Immutavault. Nothing card advantage-y until we get to the collected company, but we get to play at instant speed. So we'll go with this. We don't want to mulligan and give them an advantage we don't need to give away. In comes the Sanctum. All right, here I like to play the Mutavault early because it gives the impression of always holding something up. It masks whether or not we have instant speed action. If I had something to counter that, I would, but we don't. Here comes Flood Pit's Drowner. All right, in this case, we're going to put in the Coast and get in there. Hopefully they try something with a ability that we can counter at sorcery speed. That would be our best case scenario here. When that enters, they create a land. Do we care more about the land or drawing the card on the beanstalk? I think we care more about the land ramping them, so let's let that resolve. The Overlord comes in. We'll Tidebinder that ability. Going for the tempo play here. We don't want to let them be able to double spell and get out from under the pressure we're about to start putting down. All right, here comes a Leyline Binding. I assume going to hit the Tidebinder. So that means that our Back to Nature is now a Tishana's Tidebinder, as well as killing up the Beanstalk and the Overlord of the Hauntwoods. So here, our options are Mutavault or Storm Giants. I'm going to play Storm Giants here and hold up that Tidebinder. If I didn't have the Flood Pit's Drowner in hand, I probably wouldn't. But because I've got kind of a mediocre instant speed end of turn play to cast into whatever they are using, we're going to play that as a sacrificial card. And if they don't want to deal with it, perfect. All right. Play a Mutavault, and in we get. So here we're starting to get into really interesting options where we can double spell Tidebinder into Back to Nature, or we can cast Tidebinder on his turn and then Coco and Back to Nature on ours. Let's see what the plan is here. I'm assuming they've got lots of lands ready to go. That's all good. All right, we want them to tap out here because we don't want our Back to Nature countered. So we're going to play our Coco into, I assume, counter magic. Oh no, that's great. All right, we got a Mind Spring and a Hex Catcher. Let's see what they're going to do about that. They got to have some sort of removal. All right, Abrupt Decay, Hex Catcher down. And Mind Spring down. Awesome. More land. All right, is there a reason to put this in untapped? I need to be able to cast 5. I could swing with Mutavault, but I don't want to. Yeah, oh, there we go. That. Oh. Taxing counter spells. We're at 20. We'll pay it, and we'll get in for 2. So I don't really want to let that Overlord hit. So let's do this. Let's stall this by a turn. Try and counter the impending, and then we'll blow them out with the Yorion when they cast it next turn. All right, we've got another Coco for after all the action. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I can't cast both, so we're going to swing in for 5. Wow, they've been drawing a lot of lands if they've cycled away 2 lands already. All right, here comes their Yorion. Up the beanstalk activates. I'm assuming they're not going to flicker the Leyline Binding here. That would be strange. All right, here's the activation. We back to nature. We blow it up. Deshana's Tidebinder counters the return. We collected company. And they scoop. All right, and that's how we blow out a control deck that is playing way too hesitant and letting us chip in for far too much without combating our bodies on the ground.